A subject that I've wanted to address for a while is MGTOW, M-G-T-O-W, an acronym that means Men Going Their Own Way. This movement fascinated me when it was really just getting off the ground around 2012, 2013 maybe. I had broken up with my girlfriend at the time, and I coincidentally just happened to be coming across this new movement, and I found it fascinating because it was getting in touch with insights about female nature and male nature that were unknown to me. It's very fond of the analogy, the red pill from the movie The Matrix. The idea being that if you take the red pill, you wake up and see how things really are. Whereas if you take the blue pill, you go back to sleep, essentially living your life in a kind of state of ignorance about how things really are. So this has been adopted. It's a very good analogy, actually. It's been adopted by the men's rights movement, I suppose, and by MGTOW. I am not MGTOW. I haven't had a relationship since that time, so that's 6 years without a relationship. I am open to one. I'm not MGTOW, but I do still find I find the movement fascinating because there's some truth in it. But in this video, I wanted to address specifically why I haven't adopted this stance. I mean, most of my life has consisted of singleness. It really has. I've had a few relationships, but they have been sparse and pretty spread out. So I'm no stranger to essentially being a man who is going his own way. I live my life really without much, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't date really. I don't chase women, and that's why I'm single. I really haven't prioritized having a woman in my life, and I don't regret being single. I think it has certain benefits, just as being in a relationship also has certain benefits, and both sides have their detriments too. I mean, I can be lonely at times, but yeah, men going their own way. Here's why I don't think it's accurate, or I think there's a faulty premise at the heart of MGTOW, and it involves this view that there is something intrinsically wrong with female nature, that they are a broken creature, if you will. That just can't be true. Because if it were true, the human race would have died out. Right? Now, notice that I'm not being a white knight here, okay? There's probably some MGTOW viewers who will watch this and they'll be looking out for certain red flags, like me being a white knight or something. No, I know there are real problems with how males and females relate to each other, especially in the modern day. And I'm very interested in finding out, what is at the root of those problems. And I think I might have a bigger clue about that than what's currently being talked about in the MGTOW community. Yeah, I mean, bear that in mind. Look, evolution works by a process of adaptation. So maleness and femaleness is designed to work together, designed to complement each other. If they didn't complement each other, the species would die out because we would not relate to each other. So essentially MGTOW are saying we don't want anything more to do with women. So you're adopting a position that is essentially irrational. It has to be irrational. Now, there are some MGTOW who say that the movement isn't about hating women. I don't buy that, because when I watch videos from this community, I don't have to stray very far before I see some very disparaging remarks made about women, particularly when they mention this thing called the wall. The wall being the point in a woman's life where she becomes infertile, right? And her sexual marketplace value, this is another one of these terms, declines. So we're talking about maybe early to mid 30s here, or possibly slightly beyond that. The idea being that a man's value is based more in his how established he has become in life, his wealth, his position, status. These are the things that women find attractive rather than looks. Though looks is a part of it, sure. But a woman is really looking for a man who has established himself. So that tends to happen a little bit later. So, men maybe peak around 40, maybe even 45. Hey, I'm only 46. There's hope for me yet. But so you get these men who express this glee almost when they talk about women. Like, look, see, the wall takes no prisoners, this sort of thing. So they can be older but still have their value, whereas the woman who's in her 30s ceases to have value. And it's just the attitude of the men in this community towards women, especially when you bring up the wall. So if it's not about hating women, you're going to have to change your attitude about how you talk about women when you bring up the wall. Yeah. Again, I just want to reinforce my original point. If men and women if maleness and femaleness was not designed to complement each other, the species would die out. And in fact, the direction that MGTOW is going, if every man was a MGTOW, the species would die out because we wouldn't be breeding, right? There's an irrationality here at the root of MGTOW. So beyond that, the question still remains, why aren't men and women getting along? I mean, I see this. I feel it too. And I think it has to do with something that is much, much older than feminism. I'm not a fan of feminism. I think the problem is way, way older than that, and I think it goes right back to the dawn of agriculture. It's that old. That was the point in our history where everything changed regarding male and female relations. It's when man became a farmer, that's when he started having private property. That's when it became important to have a lineage. So people pair bonded, you had employees or slaves. It was a very different way of living than prior to that, which was the hunter-gatherer era, where man was nomadic, lived in tribes of 50 or 60 people, probably was polyamorous. It doesn't seem likely that monogamous relationships existed before that point, I guess we can't really prove that, but I think if we believe that, I think what we're really doing is engaging in something called Flintstoneization. I came across that term from a book. I brought this book out before, you might have seen it, Sex at Dawn. This is the book to read on understanding male and female relationships, because it takes you right back in time and it makes a very convincing case for what life was truly like in the hunter-gatherer era. If you think of modern female hypergamy, that's another word I learned through the MGTOW community, a word that I would never have heard of before that. Hypergamy is a woman's tendency to want to level up in relationships. It's the idea that you're with one man, but you see a better offer somewhere else. Someone who's richer, someone who has a better career, things like that. So you have this tendency to want to get the better deal. And that may well be a part of female nature, because despite what feminism says, it is in a female's nature to want to be protected and provided for by a man. Not necessarily by a man, one man. And this is what I'm getting towards now. See, in the modern day, in monogamous relationships, the closest thing we experience to tribe is family. So you would have a man and a woman, typically, at the head of a family. So the woman, being the primary caregiver of the children, is dependent on the man to provide. Now, I know we're in a situation now where it's typical for men and women both to work, but there's something that doesn't make sense about that. Now, I know it's common, and it's certainly the way my family occurred in my past. Both of my parents worked, or I was given over to one of my grandparents in my very early years. But you see, that's not quite natural. It's the mother that is supposed to raise the child, and the child requires 24/7 care. Yeah, so it makes sense that the man goes out into the world to bring back resources for the family. The woman stays with the children and takes care of the home. I'm not against women working. I'm just saying, what is nature? How does nature work? And that's how it works. So a woman's hypergamy is tied to this view that she feels she wants to be protected and provided for. And that's good. She should feel that. However, how would hypergamy have expressed itself back in the hunter-gatherer era, where it was polyamorous, where it was a spirit of free love between males and females? You didn't pair bond in the same way. There just would have been sex happening. Yeah? The woman's hypergamy would have been met by simply existing within the tribe, because it wasn't a man that provided security, it was the tribe itself that provided security. So the reason why we see hypergamy destroying relationships today is because monogamy is not, strictly speaking, natural. It's got nothing to do with feminism. So the woman naturally wants to make the best deal for herself, you see? And the man also, I feel it keenly within myself. I can be deeply in love with a woman, but have an eye that strays all over the place and is very interested in sex with other women. I may not engage in sex with other women while I'm in a relationship, but I certainly have desires for it. And you can even have very intense romantic feelings for not just one woman, but many. That can happen. What does that say about human nature? Now, I know a Christian would say that this is reflective of the fact that we are fallen, but I don't accept that premise. I think this is all relating to the fact that we are essentially the same creature that we were in the hunter-gatherer period. And we do relate perfectly to each other as men and women. We complement each other perfectly, just not in the modern culture, not in this strange mutated version of how we were originally meant to live. Now, I know we can't go back to that hunter-gatherer way, because there are 7-point-something billion people on the planet. Unless we start, making communes and things. I mean, I support monogamy. If I were in a relationship with a woman, I would be completely monogamous. But not because it's natural, because it's necessary. For the simple reason that a polyamorous lifestyle in the modern day is going to lead you to sexually transmitted disease. It's insane. That would not have been a factor in the hunter-gatherer period because the tribes were isolated from each other. Imagine something like AIDS had occurred in the hunter-gatherer period. It would have killed one entire tribe and then it would have died out because there would have been little or no interaction with other tribes due to geographical isolation. You see? Whereas now, sexually transmitted disease just runs rife because people are promiscuous. And while that promiscuity is natural, it's something that you really want to avoid for very practical reasons. I mean, I have a friend of mine who might even be watching this video, who in earlier years of his life was something of a playboy, and he mentioned to me once that he got chlamydia, I think 2 or 3 times. It was just due to the fact that he was a good looking man and had easy access to sex because he was attractive and he enjoyed the partying lifestyle. A geek like me has never had that problem. I was a virgin for a very long time. And sex doesn't really play an important part in my life at all, and never has. But each to their own, So what am I getting out about this whole MGTOW thing? Yeah, I think I've kind of said my point. You got to get off this view that females are broken. They're not broken. They're just susceptible. They're just reacting to a culture that isn't suitable for our real nature, as are men. Men are doing exactly the same thing in their own way. But we just somehow have to make the best of it because there seems to be no going back. Yeah. So I'm a supporter of monogamy. I think women would do well to keep the hypergamous tendencies that they have in check, in the same way that men would do well to keep their tendencies to fall prey to the next pretty face or the next shapely body. Because men are wired visually. This is our predicament. We're wired to respond to women very visually. We have to keep that in check. Otherwise, how do we make family work? But I think there needs to be an open exchange of ideas between men and women. And I don't think the MGTOW community is healthy anymore. Maybe it never was, I don't know, but the end game of this has to be healing the division, getting us back into a state where we can relate to each other,